Hi, I'm Ashy and this is Crafty with Ashy, and I just try to inspire just personal expression through any creative outlet you have. For me, that is painting, baking, and crocheting. Today we're going to be talking about watercolor Christmas cards. So I set out to come up with a bunch of different designs that could be painted super fast and last minute for Christmas cards. I am such a bad procrastinator, so there's no way that I'm going to start my Christmas cards early enough. And these super simple designs will help me get something out that's still personal and handmade. So most of these designs fit the bill. 3 out of these 4 took between 5 and 10 minutes. And if you were to batch produce them, it'd be even faster because you wouldn't have to wait for the drying time, right? So you're doing each card one layer, and then by the time you get back to the first card, the first layer should be dry for you to just paint on your second layer. And you'll get faster with your techniques too. So these are super fast. Now the snowman, not as fast. This one took more like maybe 15 minutes. I'm sure as I keep doing it, I would get faster with it, but this one did take a little bit longer. But he's so cute, I couldn't leave him out of the video. I think he's adorable. Also though, if anybody out there has any tips, I am a self-taught painter, I've never taken a class. If anyone has any tips for me to mix my paints faster, that would be greatly appreciated. For some reason, mixing watercolor paints just takes me a long time, and it's not necessarily getting the right color that's the problem, though sometimes that's the problem. My main problem is I can't seem to get enough of the paint off of the brush onto my palette to mix like an effective amount of paint. I don't know if that makes sense, but if it does and you have a tip for me, let me know in the comments below, please. I would super appreciate it. Anyway, grab some watercolor paper and some of your paints, and let's get started making these personalized last minute Christmas cards. We're going to start with this cute snowman card. So we first have to mix up our paint. So for snow, you're not really painting in a color really. You're painting in a soft shadow, a little bit of a reflection of the sky. So you need to mix up a really soft gray. And then we're going to do a wet on wet technique. So I just have clean water that I'm putting on my page where I want kind of my snow drifts to be. And then I add in my soft pale gray, which is a mix of Payne's gray and white. You could just dilute your Payne's gray a lot with water and get a pale gray, but adding the white adds just a little bit of a muted look or tone to it. So I like doing that. And then you just dab your paint into the water and let it bleed out. You can help blend it out a little bit with the brush, but just try not to overwork it. And then it's going to dry a lot lighter than what it appears when it's wet. So go ahead and add in a little bit more of the deeper shadowy color and kind of picture where the sun is and let that be your guide on where you add the shadows. And then we're going to add our snowman in. And so he's kind of sitting behind that snowdrift on the right side and then in front of the one on the left side. So you can kind of see where the bottom of his lowest ball is. And then we're coming around the side into that snowdrift. And we just got a nice big round snowman. And then we're just going to soften those edges and kind of let it bleed out toward the middle just a little bit so that it looks like he has some curve, right? It's a 3D shape. It's not two-dimensional. So you want to add just something to where it makes it look like it has that curve. You got that soft shadow. Follow your same direction where your shadow was for your snowdrifts and put more of a shadow on that side. And then kind of under him, there's going to be a little bit of a shadow. It's grounding him, right? We don't want to look like he's floating in the air. He's got to be grounded on the snow. So add a little bit of a shadow. Then you're going to add in your second ball. And all of these I'm just freehanding. I'm not concerned about them being perfect symmetrical circles. If you are, which maybe, some people are a little bit more OCD about that than I am, but if you're concerned about that, just take like little lids or something circular that you can trace around. And then you're just going to follow those same techniques for each layer, adding in the shadow, blending out. with some clean water. So again, we want to make him look grounded. So under each layer, we add a shadow, and then under his bottom part, we add the shadow and blend out those layers. Then we're going to add in our arms, and for these, we put just a little kind of semicircle, make it look like a little bit of a shadow where the stick is stuck into the snow, and then we're just having him reach up kind of toward the sky with that arm. We're adding some little twiggy fingers to my branch, and for my branch, I used burnt umber and a little bit of I think Payne's gray, maybe black, but just to deepen it up a little bit and add a little bit more of a shadow to it also. And then we do the exact same thing for the other side. You can make his arm stick in whichever way you want. I didn't want it pointed down because then I thought it looked like he was doing the disco. So now we're just going to use black to add his coal. So I'm doing some coal buttons and coal eyes and a coal mouth. And for these, coal pieces are not circular. They're not necessarily a specific shape. They can all be a little bit different. So we're adding those for his buttons. And then for his eyes, a little bit smaller, and his mouth will be really small pieces. Put a nice smiling mouth on our snowman. For my carrot nose, I mixed a little bit of my cadmium orange and just a tiny bit of my yellow just to lighten it up just a little bit. I didn't want it to be too bold. And then we're going to put a deep red scarf on him, just a solid color, make it look like it's curved underneath his chin. This is helping define his neck, and it's just cute. Adds a little pop of color to the card in addition to his nose. And then we're just going to sweep those tails of the scarf out to the side. You can make them look a little bit wavy so that it looks like they're kind of blowing in the wind. So it's nice because you don't have to worry about really a specific shape, because you can just say, well, it's windy, I don't have to worry about it, right? So just sweep in your tails to one side, kind of make them separate so that, again, it just adds a little bit of fun. We're going to put a top hat on our snowman. So we're just going to do kind of a rectangle, but it's a little bit rounded at the top so that it looks like you can see a little bit of the top of the hat. Throw a brim around it, and then kind of fill it in with black, but it doesn't have to be a solid black. You want to add some highlights and stuff. So just kind of blend out the paint that's there from your outline and blend it in toward the center. Once we're done with that, after it dries somewhat, you can deepen up to kind of define the shape a little bit more. So define the top edge of the hat, define the brim a little bit more. And that's our snowman. Now this one did take me a little bit longer, probably more like 15 minutes to do this snowman versus the other ones were a lot faster in this group of cards. So if you're looking for a faster one, keep watching. These other ones are faster. So now we're going to do our Christmas ornament. And for this one, I just chose a very deep red, going for a simple circle Christmas ornament. And I'm freehanding these, so my circle is not perfect. If you want it to be perfect, trace a circle first and then follow your line. But we're going to use kind of the same technique that we used for the snowman. We put in the outline, and then we're going to kind of blend it toward the center a little bit. I'm not using perfectly clean water on this. I just watered down or added some water to my brush to dilute my paint a little bit more. And then I'm blending it out toward the middle. I'm going to make the highlight on this kind of the right center of the ball. So that part is going to have a lot less paint. So adding in some clean water there and just barely touching where that paint is to let it bleed in toward that center. And then we just are going to go in and soften up the edges a little bit. So I kind of use a scrubbing technique to soften my edges. I have no idea if this is really like a normal watercolor technique, but it works for me, and it kind of gives me my desired effect. So that's what I do. I just kind of scrub with some clean water, almost not dry brush, but not a super sopping wet brush. And then we're just going to tap in now. It's still damp, and we're going to tap in some more of that red just to deepen up that color. And I don't need it to be like a perfect one shade across the whole thing, because again, adding those highlighted areas, adding some depth on one part, it gives it more of that spherical appearance versus kind of having a two-dimensional flat object. So just go in and deepen up your color. I also switched to a slightly more bright red instead of kind of that more, it's almost like a blood red. So we just do that. And then I'm adding the top part. I have no idea what this is called. The top part of the Christmas ornament where it hangs from. I don't know what it's called. Anyway, I'm just using a black for that. But it's not all the way concentrated, so you can see it's a little bit more gray. And then add your circle to put your hook in for hanging it on the tree. And then we're just going to use some white gouache, and you really have to add a lot of water to it for this technique because we are going to do a splatter technique. So a lot of water in your gouache, and then you're going to take your paintbrush and just tap it onto, or vice versa, tap your object onto the brush, but tap to splatter that gouache onto your painting. And the red is still a little bit damp in this, so you're going to get a little bit of a bleeding. It's going to be super subtle and not just opaque splotches of white paint. So you can see it bleeding in. It's almost looking like a snowflake effect on that red, and I really like that subtle snowflake effect. Now, I got some extra splotches of that gouache that were more on the dry part that didn't really bleed. So I'm actually just using that, blending it out a little bit. It's right there on my highlight. So I'm just blending it out to make that even just a little bit more highlighted. And then we can go in after it dries a little bit and add in some more of that gouache. Gouache is, it's a different type of paint than watercolor. So it's a little bit more opaque, but it's super similar to watercolor. It's somewhere in between acrylic and watercolor from what I understand. I'm sure there are much better descriptions of what it is than that, but from what I can tell, that's what it is. And then I'm just gonna stick my border in silver. So this is metallic silver, and I'll put a link to the metallic paints, watercolor paints that I'm using in the description below. Pardon my head, by the way. I didn't realize that it got under the camera a little bit. Anyway, but just a nice loose wash right along your tape, and you'll get a nice border. So next is the Christmas stocking. Blanked on what they were called for a second. So Christmas stocking, I went with red and green, just kind of traditional Christmas colors. They're a little bit of an earthy tone of red and green though. So I start by outlining my boot. Now this one, I freehanded all of these. I didn't draw any of these first. This one probably would have turned out better if I would have drawn it first, because I probably would have shifted it over to the left a little bit more, done it a little bit bigger, kind of refined the shape a little bit, thought about the placement of my presents a little bit more. But just my little hint, go ahead and maybe draw this one out first. But overall, just kind of outline your shape and again, make it bleed into the center. It's the same technique as the Christmas ornament. And I didn't leave an area for as much highlight because Christmas stockings are a lot more flat. The top is a little bit wavy with the red, and then I go in and add my green cuff, I guess is what it's called. I don't know. But a green cuff, and I just fill this in right along where that wavy border of the red was, just to give it a little bit of contrast. And I just fill that in with my green. Right. And then we need to add the little loop on the back for where the stocking hangs from. So just in that same green color. smaller brush, added a little loop. I'll also link the brushes that I'm using in the description below. I've been really happy with these brushes that I got on Amazon. So if you're interested in seeing those, they were not too expensive. So I'll put a link to them. Now, for the Christmas present, I did a little rectangle sticking up of just clean water, and then I'm adding in a striped wrapping paper look. And I did the water first to get a little bit of a softer stripe, a little bit of a bleed, and I'm doing purple and pink stripes. So I did my purple lines first, and then I'm going back in with my pink and kind of going between them. If they bleed in together a little bit, I am perfectly fine with that. And so just kind of make that striped pattern. I define my edges a little bit more. Again, throwing my border on. This border I found just really gave that finished look to the cards, and just made them kind of step up a little bit in the finish. And once you remove that tape, it's so much fun to see those nice crisp lines. Now, I felt my stocking was lacking something, so I decided to see if my metallic paint would cover that red, and it did. So I went ahead and added some gold metallic stripes to my stocking. Put a little bit of gold just added to the green. Now, the gold is not super opaque, so it's not covering that green by any means, but it's just adding a little bit of the sparkle, a little bit of the metallic. So you can do that if you would like. And that's basically it for the stocking. So this next one, and this one is my favorite. Absolutely. This was the fastest, easiest, and it's beautiful. So this is the most simple nativity set nativity painting you could ever do. You want a little bit of a looser paint, because this could look overworked because it's so simple. You really don't want it to look overworked. So just add in like a little bit of a curved triangle and then your straight lines down. And I start with this outline, and then right in the middle of my nativity scene, what's it called? A stable, I guess. You're going to add your manger manger. So put a little X and then connect the top line, and that's your manger. So easy. I decided that it needed to be a little bit darker. So I went in and added a little bit more black to my burnt umber, and then I just darken it up. This is kind of a silhouette scene, so you want it to be pretty dark. And then we're going to paint in baby Jesus. Baby Jesus is a circle, his little head, and so simple. So just put a circle right on top of that manger. And then we are going to add in Mary. So for Mary and Joseph, you want to do the circle for their head, but it's a little bit more, I guess, of an oval. And you want it to look like they're looking down at baby Jesus. So it's a little bit of an offset oval, and then a long oval for their body. It's so simple, but put the oval a little bit, again, offset behind the head so it looks like they're looking down. Okay, so just an oval. And then we do the same technique for Joseph. He's a little bit taller than Mary, but same exact idea, and so simple. And then I add the star, right? The Star of Bethlehem, and we put it right on top of this, this building. I think it's called a stable. Now I can't think of it because the manger is what he lays in, but the stable is the building. I don't know. Anyway, put the star right on top. And I did just a very simple cross and then an X in my gold paint, and so simple and beautiful. And then we're just going to add in our same color of gold border all the way around this card. And it goes a little bit across the top of the star, and it's fine. No issue with that. But if you wanted to shift your painting down a little bit because you didn't like it touching, do that. But really quick, loose wash with this gold paint and border all the way around along that tape. And this is my favorite by far. I could make 100 of these. They were so easy, so fast, and I think they are so beautiful. So I really hope you enjoyed all of these tutorials. If you're looking to make cards, do these. They're so, for the most part, simple and fast and so beautiful. I loved making these cards. They were so simple, so fun, and came out so beautifully. I really would love to know which card is your favorite. My favorite, as you know from what I said in the video, was this simple nativity scene. I think this, just in its simplicity, is so gorgeous, and it was so simple and super fun to make. So let me know which your favorite was though in the comments below. And if you did enjoy this video, be sure to check out my last video for the 5-minute Christmas tree Christmas cards here. Thank you so much for being here today. Have a great one.